Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Trek Talk with Tech and Kirk. I'm TechMan16, and I have our returning Discovery champion, Big J, with us, and a moderator from the official Star Trek Discord, Mordon, with me. How you guys doing today?
Hey,
Oh,
how are
I'm
you?
doing good. Hey, Mordon, how you doing? Tech man, thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. So, thanks, guys, for coming. For we're gonna go in a different direction for this Discovery season finale review. I want to kick it to Big J's podcast, Beyond Trek. They did a really detailed scene by scene breakdown and analysis. And so go check out uh, Beyond Trek Productions on YouTube. They really broke it down on a I want to say on a cellular level. The season finale going through every single scene. So we're not going to do that today. But Big J, you want to uh, provide some advertising for Beyond Trek?
Yes, I appreciate that. So, like you said, on YouTube, you can find our YouTube channel, Beyond Trek Productions. We usually have some different content on there. Besides just Beyond Trek podcast, we have some pre-recorded audio dramas in there, some kind of like meta in-universe skits. There are more things, more side projects that we're going to be doing during this break between the series, and then Beyond Trek podcast will pick up again doing episode reviews and just if there's general news in regards to Star Trek that's out there. And we do the episode reviews, which is always a lot of fun. One of our co-hosts, Dag, he's great at doing a storytelling kind of thing. I usually find myself listening to him telling the story about the episode than I do talking. So I kind of fall into that. I got to remind myself that, well, there was something I meant to say about that scene. And got another co-host, Renzo, who just his knowledge of Trek inside and out and just other stuff uh, really amazes me. So we definitely give you some knowledgeable reviews and input, and it's not just straight reaction to scenes. We'll also take scenes or take issues or topics and circle it back around, try to relate it to something that's in the real world. So I think that kind of gives us a unique little thing. So thank you again for having me on here. I really appreciate it.
That's good. That's exciting. So thank you both for being here. All right, let's kind of dive into the season finale for season 3 of Star Trek Discovery. I'm going to re-record this part as my fastest 3 minutes, but effectively, I tried to rewatch this season finale to just try to see if anything I missed, and I really kept getting a lot of inconsistencies with in canon Discovery Trek, and then outside Trek, the greater Trek canon. One of the things I was watching was like the Discovery should have detachable cells, but all the shots I've seen, of it warping or moving, then the cells were attached. And then I was watching the dot 23s, and the dot 23s kept blowing up. So how did this fear data survive? I was really like, it was mind boggling to me. The other thing, the other thing that I was kind of going through my mind was, and I don't remember this very well, but Discovery and the Viridian warped separately. And then sometime later, the Discovery happened to be inside the Viridian. And I could not see the scene where that occurred. And then, the biggest thing, I just took some notes. The Viridian was, or not the Viridian, but all the Federation ships were firing upon Discovery within their little bubble. And it seemed like there was a lot of shots that were landing on Discovery but weren't doing any damage. So I was just like, was this reminiscent upon the Dreadnought class firing upon the Enterprise in Star Trek Into Darkness, where the ship took more shots than it did in the entire original series, and it just survived somehow? Let's take that and put it aside, and I really want to go to the character progressions and their payoffs. So, and let's start with Michael Burnham. What did you guys like or dislike about Burnham's in-season progression and then her overall character progression? And was the payoff of her being captain worth what she did? And we'll start with Big J because I know he's a big Discovery fan.
Yes, I like Discovery. I try to be impartial when it comes to any Star Trek series, but I know I lean a little closer to the positive side. But in any case, in regards to this season's progression of Michael Burnham, so she spent a year alone trying to find Discovery, and so the thing that she had was a very different time in the 32nd century than what she was expecting. I'm sure the Emerald Chain is in power as opposed to the Federation. So it was right away a very big kind of. I'm sure she was a little discombobulated with that as to what was going on, why it happened. So she had to jump right into this lifestyle of kind of being a mercantile trader. You don't have the post-scarcity type economy. It's kind of gone back into capitalism. You've got to trade goods for information, et cetera, et cetera. There's kind of more of a. I'm going to have to use a different franchise, but I really felt like you've got more of a Han Solo vibe where you got to make a living, whether it be hauling cargo or working jobs, because she couldn't just go to some library computer or freely ask for information, because there are things that people need. There are, the items or commodities. So really nothing's coming for free anymore. And once she was able to finally locate Discovery, I really think that year that she kind of spent abroad or, just adjusting to all of that, it really, I felt, put her in a kind of position where not to say that she wasn't a team player anymore, but it seemed like she got used to pretty quickly on doing her own thing or doing what she needed to do or knew to do to get the job done. And unfortunately, that meant butting heads more with Saru, because Saru is a very by the books and by regulation kind of guy, whereas Michael knows sometimes to get the result that you need, it would be great if you could be honest and upfront about it, but sometimes you can't. And sometimes you have to stretch those rules a little bit, which is something I think she, she picked up on just being in this environment, that things are different and you have to operate a different way to get things done. And we could see that when she became first officer briefly, that I don't feel that she was really at the time suited for the role, because for the role of first officer, because she still had that mentality of this is what needs to happen to get this job done, whether it's above board or not. And between Admiral Vance and Captain Saru, they kind of weren't having that, and especially since she already had a reputation of doing things like that and getting herself into hot water. So once she got bumped back down from the posting of first officer, I think that put her back where she could operate the way she knew to operate to a degree. She now didn't quite have that. You're on the spot. You're under the microscope of being the first officer, because it didn't really seem to fit her being in that role. It was too restricting for her. And
was the payoff worth it for her to become captain at the end, for all the things that she's done throughout the season?
I want to say that yes, yes, the payoff was worth it. I really think that she deserved the position to be the captain. And here's the thing: let's just look at it as your basic rank structure. So if your captain is going to take a sabbatical, take time off, you can't take the current first officer and make them captain. That was Tilly. She's an ensign. It's already kind of a stretch that an ensign was made the first officer, but rank and position aren't always tied together. You can be a first officer and not be a rank of commander. So the other thing that we have to look at, and this was something that I've mentioned before in the Beyond Trek podcast, is that there are times where it seems more logical for a certain character to either be in a scene or to take a certain position. For example, technically, when Saru was naming a first officer, it should have been Nielsen, who was the blonde-haired lady that you saw several times sitting in the command chair when Saru was not on the bridge. The problem is that when we're getting a first officer, you have to think, do we have the first officer be the character who technically should be, and now suddenly we have to give this person more screen time? Or do we not do much with that first officer character? The answer to that is, well, no. So we have to take someone that's part of the, what I call the A crew of the cast, which is Saru, Burnham, Tilly, Stamets, Culber, and like them. Like they are the main ones there, and everybody else is consistent background characters. So I think that of those five, that really the only one they could pick was Tilly, because that actress, that character is part of that A crew, even if it doesn't technically make sense. So in regards to that payoff, here's the thing that I'll see, and this is going to be kind of a bold statement. I really think that Burnham was Kirk before there was really Kirk. If you think about it, if you go back and look at some things that Kirk did as a captain, he was kind of if the rules fit and the rules work to get the job done, great. If they're not, then I'm going to do what I need to do to get the job done. And I believe that there's kind of this sense of that we don't acknowledge that. We kind of compartmentalize Burnham and what she does and how she acts as that's just that character and that character trait. But if you really think about it, look at some things that she did and how she accomplished it, and tell me that that Kirk was not in some ways very similar to that. It was not beyond him to, if you have to stretch the prime directive to get the job done or break it, you're going to do it. If you have to tell a Commodore to get the hell out of your chair or whatnot, he's going to do that. So that's why I think that it was the payoff with her to be the captain was good, and it was correct, because with her style, like it or not, she didn't do things like Vance said. She might not have done things the right way. She did it her way, and it worked.
Okay. All right. Mordon, what do you think?
If we want to follow the arc, we gotta look at it for either only season 3 or starting from season 1, because season 3 they said on many occasions that it's sort of like a fresh start, and it could have been. But when you look at it, Michael's arc from season 1, you see that she hasn't changed that much. She still thinks that it's all her way, or her way is the only way. And maybe it's natural that she would become captain. But I think it was very much of a lackluster. In fact, I'll delve into the entire season for a moment. I think everything was sort of a lackluster. Like, they started several stories, even with her. and dropped it in the middle. Had weak conclusions for almost everything. Now, when it comes to Michael, yeah, sure, she was a year doing what she was doing, but when she joined back, she knew that she had certain rules that she has to follow. She knew that she has certain objectives. And we have a little game sometimes on on our Discord. Is that we do a guessing game? Like people, predict what's going to happen, as I'm sure many of you did, and I know you do. And a lot of people thought that she would leave. She would take a book, and they would depart and do their own thing until the end of the season. And that was that wasn't the case. And let me go back. There's an 80s movie trope that even if you don't follow the orders, even if you disobey your commander, even if you break everything, as long as you save the day, then everything is forgiven. And it sort of felt that way. She, in some ways, when she left, she put Saru, she just threw him under the wheels. He was in a lot of trouble. And if she would have, if things could have gone wrong, he would have been screwed. And the entire way of thinking, where she said, we'll just send our ship away from Discovery, book ship that is, and Osara will not start a war. What the hell was that even? Like, that tiny ship came from Discovery, if you know what I mean. It seems like every topic they tried to tackle on this season was they had the easy solution out. Every time the hero would win, like, indefinitely, there was no serious conflict. There's no heavy burdens. And regarding what you said, Big J, about ranks on Discovery, it sort of felt like there was no, like, sure, they have ranks, but the ranks are unfelt. It feels like they're a bunch of friends playing Starship, and more and less like a real Starship. Like, you remember on TNG where someone would say permission to speak freely. That's something that never happens on Discovery. Tilly goes to Saru and says, "Yeah, that was great, Captain. Good work." Nothing would like that would happen on the other shows, and that's the same with. That's in some ways the same with Michael. Why did she even earn the captain's chair? I didn't. It's like disobedience is rewarded. Now, why did she even have Why did she even have the right to declare Saru as the captain? I mean, sure, they all left because of her, but what gave her that right? It feels like they forgave her, like, every time. They just forgave her. It's like the show was made on the get-go. Like, there was no. It wasn't like Babylon 5 where they wrote the entire season and then made the show. It's like every 2 episodes. So what are we going to do next? And just one remark regarding what you said. The Federation was never about socialism and capitalism. That was never much mentioned. They spoke about Earth, but the Federation was the different planets did whatever they wanted.
Yeah, so that's true. I see your point. Deep Space Nine had Quark, and Quark always dealt with Latinum, and then at one episode, Cisco told Quark, who owns the lease to your bar, but then it gets back into the without the money aspects, like, and Quark goes, and you haven't charged me rent since the whole time I've been here. But going back to Burnham, first of all, I feel that she was always destined for the captain's chair because obviously she's like the main character of the show. Even from season one, it's like she became a mutineer, or Starfleet's only mutineer, and then it's like, how do you redeem yourself to get captain's chair? Now, you mentioned something interesting, Big J, and that is that she was Kirk before Kirk. And it was interesting because, prior to this, I was always thinking about Spock saying cowboy diplomacy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
with Burnham, to me, she's very much cowboy, not so much diplomacy. And that's how I feel about her. But I think the series was really set up kind of to put her in the captain's chair. I don't want to say by any means necessary, but it was always kind of like the trajectory, because I think with how people reacted to seasons 1 and 2, they realized that the focal point of the show should be the captain, not one of the subordinates. And I think that's kind of where the transition occurred. The one thing I will say about Burnham, though, is, she was raised by Vulcans, and then she was in Starfleet. To me, it's similar to kind of like an Icelandic person, like a descendant of a Viking, blonde haired, blue eyed, studying with Tibetan monks, then for 15 to 20 years, and then serving in the Israeli IDF for the next like 7 or 8, and then that person heads to Malibu, California, for like a year. This is her year with Book, and all of a sudden after that year, this blonde haired, blue eyed person is like, "Yo, dude, I'm a surfer now, bro. Screw the meditation stuff and all the military discipline. It's like, surf's up, man. I don't know where I fit anymore." So to me, that was inconsistent with her background. And
You're right.
But it's she still felt, doing the Kirk path to get to the captain's chair.
Right. So a couple things I wanted to address there that you said, and that is something that has been a topic, and you're absolutely right in how you described it. Was, how is it that suddenly after a year she's almost like a completely different person? Would not have everything else in her past still kind of held on and been that way? And the answer to that is that I don't know. I honestly don't have an answer to that. It does. You're right in that it doesn't quite make sense. That behavior would change in just a year. Maybe it did. But the thing, I think the thing that I will say is that it wasn't really just over that year. This is something that really started to change in the first season. In the first season, there was, I can't think of many instances after Battle of the Binary Stars where she seemed to be totally like kind of semi-Vulcan and the whole logic thing. It really felt like it was starting to bleed off a little bit already. And then as we went through the first season and then the second season, that it kind of started going away a little more and a little more. So really, when you think about it, it wasn't that, I don't think that it was that we had, for example, Spock all the way up until the first episode of season 3, and then after that year jump, that suddenly he's gone to Cybok, or whatever. It was not just a sudden 1-year change. I think it was something that had been happening for a while now. And so to address the other point that was made about Discovery, and can we talk about kind of how it seems like there were a lot of threads tied up, or the progression of the character in that, or am I jumping ahead?
If I may, before that, regarding an arc equals to progression in some ways. And that year was just a single episode. When she returned, she was the same Michael that she was in season 1. You know, I know you are my friend, Captain, but fuck off. I'm sorry. I mean, screw you. I'll do my own thing, and you know, I'll face the consequences later. And then she's back. She's sad, and then they forgive her, and she sort of does the same things over again. She runs alone, trying to save the ship, while everyone else do their own thing. It's progression is an arc, and an arc is progression, and I just didn't see it.
Well, and the other thing to think about, and I almost forgot to mention this, so they are from the mid 23rd century. And during that time, so when you had Archer's Enterprise in that phase of Starfleet, they're exploring the unknown. They're going out further than any human ever had. They're trying to kind of make things up as they go. There was a lot of the book that wasn't written. They're building up things to figure out, okay, what do we need to handle or address these things? And then you get to the time of Star Trek, the original series, and of course Star Trek Discovery. You're in a wild, wild west part of Starfleet. You're still trying to tame the frontier, and you're trying to hold on to that territory that you claimed. So there's going to be some cowboy diplomacy, because you don't always have the luxury of having Starfleet to contact every time something happens. You've got to make those decisions. You've got to figure things out. It really would be like a sheriff of a western town. Is he going to try to contact the White House every time there's some kind of issue? Is it even feasible to do that? And the answer to that is, well, no. You wouldn't really get any kind of timely response. Now, I'm not saying that would happen in the case of Starfleet. You could still communicate fairly quickly, but the thing is that there are a lot of matters and a lot of things that you do have to make those decisions and judgment calls when you're out there, because we have to remember, Starfleet Command is not out there on the frontier. You are. So you're going to be best suited to make that call, make that decision, because you're there in the middle of it. They may give you some guidance, or you may just be giving them an FYI, but an admiral sitting at his desk is not going to really be able to make that assertion of the situation quite as well as the captain that's out there doing it. So that's where they came from. They came from the cowboy ways of Starfleet. Now, that doesn't mean that Saru was that way. He kind of got thrust into the captain's chair a little quick and kind of unexpectedly, and that's why he was researching prior captains and how they did things. He was looking for kind of a basis and a guideline, and the way that he formed how he captained was just how he formed it. But then when you get to the turn of the century, get into the 24th century, things are kind of done. You've got your territory, you've got your claim. It's more administrative and just keeping up with what you've got, and it's less cowboy work. So, like, take Picard and put him in Starfleet in the 23rd century. How does that look? What does that look like for him? I think that he would be completely out of place there, because you can't bring an office manager out to the Wild West. He's suited for that time of Starfleet where things are more just maintaining. You're maintaining mostly. So I think that's something that we have to consider, and we have to remember, is that Michael is a product of her time.
Perhaps, but she wasn't the captain. It wasn't her call. I mean, sometimes you feel like your boss is making a mistake, but you gotta follow.
Well, but do you though?
Absolutely. You are part of a semi-military organization. You don't just say, okay, bye, and leave, and then expect to be forgiven.
Well, and I get what you're saying. It's people follow rules or people die. You're whether it's in the military or if it's your boss at work. There are times when it's you just fall in line and do what you're told. But I'm a believer in there can be cases where you kind of go rogue a little bit. And I'm not saying that that's okay. It's just that you better be right and you better have a result because
if you fail, then everyone is dead. But if you are successful, then you're a hero.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I hate to say that in that example that it would be very unfortunate if you failed and everyone died. Yes, I'm not saying that that's not the case. It's just that okay. Here's an example I'll use. Let me take your example and just kind of take it down a couple steps because that's a tough one. I'm not saying that you're not right or you don't have a point. It's just that's a tough one.
One last line before you continue. How many times Kirk's guys, Kirk's crew have mutinied and done their own thing without him?
Oh boy, I don't think ever.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, but I think
unless they're gone crazy. Unless they're gone crazy.
No, I'm thinking. I cannot think of one single time. But then again,
May I offer an example? I think this example would fit very well, and it'll go into the realm of American football. So, you're playing in a Super Bowl, and you've got multiple 4th and goal situations that your quarterback calls an audible. Michael is the running back. Michael calls her own audible and somehow wins the game, or at least multiple times she gets into the end zone. But that's Michael calling the audible. She's not the quarterback. And so I think what Mordon's getting to is the quarterback, it's his responsibility if he doesn't think that the coach's play is correct or a Starfleet, and he'll call an audible to make sure he'll give him the best chance for victory. But it's not the decision of the running back to call his or her own audible to make sure that the quarterback succeeds or not.
Yes, you're right. And so I played football, so I totally appreciate the reference that you're making. And there have been times where you get up to the line, you're given your play, but it's completely within the decision making of the quarterback that if an audible needs to be called, that happens because again, you're on the sideline, you're a coach on the sideline, or you might be the coach up in the press box, but the quarterback has that point of view where he can say, okay, I'm seeing this linebacker being really antsy. He's going to blitz. So we have to go to the left instead of the right. So yes, of course the coach is going to say, well, yeah, you're supposed to do that and make that audible. And I think what I hear you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, that so we're on the line. It looks like the quarterback to our right. I'm sorry, the linebacker to our right is looking like he might blitz. Quarterback calls the play to the left, but the running back says, no, we should still go right, and kind of does his own thing. And if it's successful, great. If it's not, you're going to get your head pulled off. So yes, I get what you're saying there. That is correct. The point that I'm making is that you have to be so sure and confident that you are correct that you're also going to take the consequences if you're not. And the example that I wanted to make was a little more in line with Dr. Crusher, and when she needed to perform that autopsy on that Ferengi. I don't recall the episode name or the season. I want to say it was season 6-ish.
With Dr. Rega, the Ferengi, who got murdered by that person who created like the multi-phasic shielding to go into the
Yes.
sun's corona. And this guy wanted to weaponize it, so she went against Picard's orders and performed an autopsy.
Right. It was completely against the culture of the Ferengi to do an autopsy. However, she got to a point to where she knew that I am right, but the only way I can accomplish this is to do that autopsy. Even if it's against orders, I know that I'm going to find the information that's needed. So, if you remember, when she came in to talk to Picard, and she came in and said, I performed the autopsy. If you remember Picard's reaction, he didn't just right away flip his desk over and start yelling at her. He leaned back a little bit and asked her, what did you find? So even he was hoping that, well, Beverly, you took this chance, you went there. I really hope you found something, because if you did, I can help you maybe clean this up some. But if you did not, you're screwed. You messed up royally. And so if you go back, look at that scene, look at his demeanor, I think that's what it was he was praying to God she found something, because if she was right, you might have a better chance of getting a slap on the wrist. If you're wrong, then you're going to be booted out. Well, she said she didn't find anything, so she's getting the boot. But she did end up being correct, because the guy tried to kill her on the shuttle. She was right. Everything was good. So that's why I'm saying, if you're going to go there, you need to know that despite the orders, I am right, and this is what I have to do. Because if you were correct, great. If you're wrong, you're gone. So, I don't think that was a case. I think the case there was not following that order ended up being right. And I'm not saying that disobeying orders is good. I'm not encouraging that you disobey orders. It's just that if you do, then you either need to be correct, or if you're not, you need to suffer those consequences.
Not disagreeing with you, but I want to bring up the issue of an arc again.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely right. With everything you said, I have no disagreement. But we're still discussing Michael, and we're still discussing her arc, and that's not an arc. She's still doing it. She still believes that she's absolutely right. She's probably is, because that's how they write the episodes. But it seems like she hasn't learned a thing. She hasn't developed as a character. She's still her.
Okay. Yes, you're right. So what's the character progression when she's still doing things that she had done before? She thought she was right at the Battle of Binary Stars. She wasn't. There was a war. Lives were lost. There are other times where she's kind of made her own call. So I get it. I get it. In regards to character progression, it doesn't really feel like she hasn't gone from being a person that, well, if this is the right call to make, if I have to disobey orders, then I have to do that. She didn't suddenly become a compliant person at the end.
I want to say team player. Team player would be a better word.
Right. She's just as much a team player as I think she's always been. It doesn't seem like she got better at it. Doesn't seem like she really got any worse at it. She's still at the same level. There's no progression into not doing it her way, or I'm sorry, not doing it her own way and doing it the right way.
But it's the Michael Burnham way.
Yes, we're right. The Michael Burnham way, or the highway. We're just as much there as we were in season 1. So
can you name any character on the season that had a character progression, an arc, if you will?
Well, I'd have to give it to Right. Oh yeah, definitely. Tilly did. I want to say that Saru did too. It might not have been a very big or very pronounced arc, but I felt like
Saru
that
went
it
into
was
a
there.
negative arc.
What's that?
He went into a negative arc. He went from Starfleet, typical Starfleet officer to, or in my opinion, he went from Starfleet officer to, I'm going to care for this one Kelpian that I found.
Mm-hmm.
I'll argue that he didn't have an arc at all. He was the same throughout the entire series, because every season he had was his personal conflict between serving in Starfleet and his Kelpian roots. Every time, so it might not have been the same issue specifically, what's going on this planet, but every time it was the same conflict and the same, more or less the same results.
Right. And I
say-
think I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just asking, why do you say that? Why do you say that he's the same Saru?
It is exactly the same. The only progression he ever made was when he developed from the cowardly one to the brave one because of Varahai.
All right.
Yeah, the Varahai.
Yeah, that's the only progression he had, and even then, his conflicts still remain the same. So if it was on season 1 where he didn't know about Starfleet a lot, and he just conflicted with his nature, and season 2 when he wanted to go to save his planet, even though Starfleet did tell him not to, and now we didn't know if he should save Sukal, and again the conflict between his nature and Starfleet, the same thing all over again.
So, who, in your opinion, had an arc?
I'd argue that none of them.
Okay.
Even Tilly?
Tilly seems to Tilly is the same character, but he falls into her destiny. She doesn't. She wants to develop, but she doesn't. And things happen around her that force her to act the way she does. And I think that if this Tilly would go back to season 1, she would still be exactly the same person.
Is my opinion of her arc, and let's switch over to somebody else because we've talked too much about Burnham. So with Tilly, to me,
well, that's the whole point. It's her show.
Right. Well, yeah, it's Star Trek Michael Burnham. By the way, that's what they're renaming it, Star Trek Michael Burnham, for season 4.
Star Trek Burnham.
No, but Tilly went from being in season 3. She was the autistic comedic relief character to an ensign. People want to argue this, but she's completely unqualified to be a first officer, and then she progresses into a middle manager. Is the way I'd approach it. She's not assistant manager of the store, but she's like a middle manager, and I think her progression is she went from being low on the totem pole to middle management.
I'd like to add as well that our story made Saru's story even more sad, and I would even say pathetic, because one of the main subjects of this season was coping with trauma and the burdens of leadership. And finally we get Saru as the captain, but was he really? The first 5 moments, initially we just see him joke around about how we should be the captain, what would be his catchphrase, and then immediately Tilly is in command. She just screwed him up.
Yeah, because he went to his Kelpian roots. By the way, anybody notice that the word kelp is in Kelpian, and somehow that is relating to an entire species on a distant planet?
Yeah. I thought about that, but
I'm just saying, I like to eat kelp when I'm kayaking, because it's it's like a nice snack in the ocean. You could, I like it. It's kind of crunchy. It's not bad, but all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, so these people eat kelp because they're Kelpians.
Maybe they'll name something else in that language. I don't know. Yabba who?
Oh my
Well,
god.
I'm sure they've got to be close to running out of names for alien races, and that's the thing is it's not like other sci-fi franchises are helping with keeping a good stockpile of possible names to use.
You know what's funny is that it reminds me of a scene in like Men in Black or Men in Black 2, I think it was, where I think Kay is like trying to beat up a bunch of these aliens and he's kicking them all in the nuts. And then Jay goes, he's a Balchinian. So
Yeah, he's a Baltinian.
I'm like, that's just as creative.
Well, and here's the other thing to think about is, and this is those races or even planets or star systems. Maybe they had a different name for themselves, and why is it that Starfleet gets to say they're the Alpha Quadrant? Why couldn't Dominion say they're the Alpha Quadrant? It's like, well, why are we the Gamma Quadrant? We didn't name it like that. You guys are.
France is known in different names throughout every country. There's Frankreich, the Israeli state Tzarfat. It has a different name with a different language.
Right. Well, and Georgia did the same thing. She said, well, where I'm from, we call you the Mirror Universe. Which I thought, okay, good point. Yeah. So, yeah, with the Kelpians, they're called Kelpians because they eat kelp. I'll go with it. Why not?
Yeah. All right. Let's jump to. We started talking about Tilly. I want to talk about the entirety of that
bridge crew, because you could all lump them in one.
Reese, Bryce, that weird girl that showed up in the finale,
Mm-hmm.
the Miriam character who didn't want to wear the makeup, so she became Nielsen, and then Detmer and Owo, and obviously Tilly, like that entire bridge crew. First of all, to me, Reese and Bryce had maybe like 4 lines the entire show, and they're the bridge crew.
It might have been the same character.
Yeah, they're effectively like the background Harry Kim character. Like, assuming Harry Kim didn't have any lines, it's like, oh, you're the guy over there. And then, what was up with was it COVID related? Was it just scheduling issues? What was up with that character that just showed up in the finale and part of the bridge crew that suffocated for 35 minutes before the air went out?
We'll get to that later. But yes, characters come and go, and positions are here to stay. We still don't know who was the chief engineer and who was the chief medical officer of the ship. They said
I thought Culber was the chief medical, and that once Jet Reno got on board, that she was named the chief engineer.
No, on season 2, she comes by to help them deal with the with the spore drive, and she says, "The chief engineer sent me to help you." And they say, "Yeah, good." And on season 2, Colbert says that he's doing an Endorian vasectomy or something like that by the order of the medical chief.
Okay.
They were named, but they were never shown. And also they said that Discovery has like 80 crew members left after they jumped and to the future. And like every corridor has 80 people. They're lucky on it's season 8 of Game of Thrones.
Well, here's the way that I take that, because the thing that was very difficult for me to get used to on the show was I was used to Star Trek where you knew who the characters were, you knew their positions, they got episodes that were centered on them, and it was, you had the captain, the first officer, the communications, tactical, the ops guy. Basically, just you had names and positions you knew. We were kind of deep into the second season before I was really able to commit to memory or even knew the names of these other people. And it was a departure from what I was used to in Star Trek, where the main characters are the captain, Saru, Burnham. Then after that, you get into these positions where you've got a scientist, you've got a not chief medical officer, doctor. You don't have a chief engineer. You've got these characters that don't fit traditional roles. And also, the other thing is that you don't have the type of Star Trek where you've got a 26 episode season and that you can really get to know characters and their arcs and everything else. You really have to devote everything into the episodes being part of that main arc. There's really not much of a B plot in any episode. Like back in the 90s Star Trek, we had A plots and B plots and all that. You don't have that now because you don't have the time. You don't have 26 episodes.
Actually, I would disagree with you. I think there are too many plots within each episode of Discovery.
Like they took all the A plots and the B plots of a 22 episode season and condensed it down to 10 to 14.
And that's where I feel is too much of a mess. Like, for example, we're talking about payoffs here. Owo hasn't changed. Reese and Bryce, they haven't changed. Nielsen went through PTSD, but then got out of it when Luke Skywalker TIE fighted the Viridian ship.
Detmer.
So she went from...
You meant Detmer. You said Nielsen. Yeah, Detmer.
I said Nielsen. Okay, Detmer. Same, whatever. Some woman right, character background. But yeah, no, like, I mean, like they're so
Forget two episodes
that they
to say
just fit
farewell.
with the panel.
Forget two episodes to say farewell to George, or unrelated to the main plot.
Yeah, those were probably the best episodes of the season, and they were not related to the main plot, right? Because Giorgio went through a redemption arc of being Space Hitler to, we love you now, see you later.
Was it a redemption?
I think I would probably argue that the only character of the season that really had a noticeable progression was Giorgio.
But was it though? We are jumping, but I'll mention that she was still cool, she was still evil, but she just, was a little bit more intelligent about it.
Well, and to me, that's still a progression because she didn't start out that way, but she ended that way.
So of all these characters, was the payoff worth it for any of them?
You're saying there was a payoff.
Well,
you're right. Let's assume there is a payoff. For a lot of these characters, there is no payoff, and they haven't changed. They're not any different. But for some of these characters, was there a payoff, and was it worth it?
I would have to say that I'm going to answer your question with a question.
Yes.
Was the point of the season to have character progression and payoff? Was that what they were going for?
Isn't that the point of any story? You have a plot payoff and you have a character payoff, right?
I mean,
yes,
that could be opinion. Yeah, you would think so, but is that a hard written rule or is that an opinion that a show absolutely has to have a character payoff? There could be a plot payoff, but if you don't have a character payoff, were any rules broken?
I will say that this season had three topics. Well, the scarcity of resources, that's obvious. The burn, and coping with trauma and leadership. And I think that's where character payoffs and plots, that's where they should shine. And they didn't.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I don't disagree with you there. I think that when it comes to Discovery, if you're expecting a lot of character development or progression or payoff, I do concede that they are a little lean in that department. It really seems like that's kind of not really the point. It's a shame if that's the case, but I just think, and this is why I think that, and this is why I think that it's going to be a question that we can answer easier after season 4. And the reason I say that is because the first half of season 1 was just an unmitigated disaster. And that came from the writing room and the showrunners, the revolving door of showrunners and writers. They were just kind of all over the place. And I read this article. I couldn't claim I remember where it was from or anything, but I'll paraphrase it for you. That there was a point eventually during the first season where it started leaking up to the higher ups in regards to what was happening, what was going on, decisions made, what the Klingons looked like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it got to a point where the people higher up said, you need to unfuck this show right now. There was not happiness up there. So you remember there was a break in season 1, and that break was to try to do some serious retooling and course correcting, which and you can't just make it this big abrasive change. You have to kind of gradually do it, sort of try to get away from these plot lines or craziness that other writers or showrunners were doing, steadily try to fix it. And that's where we got into season 2. I really feel like that bringing in Pike and Spock, growing the Klingons' hair back, changing the D7 from this funky looking whatever it was to what's more familiar, there was some cleanup. So, and there was, let's build up some goodwill again by putting in a favorite. We've got Pike and Spock. We've got the Enterprise. And I felt that season 2 had some further course correcting there from what happened in season 1. And now that we've got this, then season 3 was sort of okay, so now we've course corrected. Now things are a bit better, but we're still on this road. So let's try to tie up these things that were from, you're playing catch up to the catch up to the catch up. And so that's why I think that there wasn't a lot of that or time for it, was because you're driving down the highway, you blew a tire, you had to put on the spare while you're driving, you missed a couple exits, so you have to kind of keep going, keep things fixed, and then get back to where you were. So season 3 really kind of felt, the first 3 seasons to me sort of felt like it was a prequel to itself. It was a build up to what we're going to get in season 4. That was probably
how many seasons do you need before we say, okay, that was a failure?
Well, did you say how many seasons do you need before you call it a failure?
Exactly.
That's a good question, but the thing is that I think that I don't think I'm the only one that recognized that that they're working towards not so much that it's a failure, but they're working towards fixing some things that took a while to fix. And that's why I feel like seasons 1, 2, and 3 ended up being a prequel to season 4. It wasn't planned that way, but it kind of shows you the effects of when you do things so strangely and incorrectly that to tie up one thread, you opened up another. To tie up that thread, you've got to go here. So that's where I get that. That's why I think that there wasn't a whole lot of room for all the different characters, character growth and character progression is because you have to get there. And it's taking a little bit longer to get there. And here's the other thing. DS9, it grew the goatee in season 4. TNG grew the beard in season 2. And Voyager...
But you still had like your jams and your good episodes, and you saw a good storyline advancing though.
But you had 26 episodes to do it. We don't have that. You had more time for that. So that's kind of the double-edged sword. Is why you don't have the time to do it. And
I'd say
one of the reasons.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I do want to say that Discovery does suffer from a lack of episodes, but that being said, I look at other shows that I've seen that have a very short season. And by the way, I'm not a fan of short seasons because I don't think there's enough time to really for the cast of Discovery. I think it has like 8 to 10 people plus several recurring characters. In 13 episodes, there's not enough time to really develop anybody. And that's what it suffers from. For example, I remember watching Dexter. It also had anywhere between 10 and 13 episodes a season. There was only like 5 characters. Truly, like per season. And you have your focal point, and then everybody else is ancillary. But you had the ability to develop all 5 or all 6 or however many there were, because it wasn't 8 to 10, and it didn't have like 200-300 years of in-canon lore that it had to deal with and balance out new audiences versus old audiences. So back to the payoffs for characters, and I want to get into payoffs for the storylines. The payoffs for characters, there's a payoff for Burnham. As much as a lot of people don't like her, she gets to be captain. It seems like there was no payoff really for Saru. Saru basically got undercut by, Vance and Burnham. Like, I'm going to take PTO, and then he comes back and like, what happened to my ship? Oh, it's gone. Sorry. PTO, no HR problem there. And then everybody else, we're just kind of there. Tilly. I still say Tilly went through a progression because, as Mordon would say, because she was forced to. But everybody else is still back. I mean, this just boggles my mind. Like the bridge crew is just there. Your most important officers. Okay, yeah, man, you're exploding stations.
I would like to add,
there it goes.
And that everything in Discovery up until this point, including season 1 and 2, was what my teachers called me in high school wasted potential. Is that in that way that the ideas were there, the concepts were there, everything was there. I don't want to delve into season 1 and 2 too deeply, but take, for example, Lorca, a deep, dark captain going rogue. What a cool concept. No, is the mirror universe Nazi. They go to season 2. What is the Red Angel? How can she lift buildings? Yeah, it's Burnham's mom. And now we're at the future. In the future, they could have gone crazy. They could have gone wild. Epic new aliens, epic new races, new planets. Could do everything. And they just didn't. I have no hope for season 4. In the case you're saying that it's a build-up.
I can see where you're going with that, and it does kind of feel like you could have done more. But the thing that I was worried about personally with going 950 years or whatever it was into the future was that...
Say 1,000 for it to be easier.
Well, I just thought that there was not going to be like really... How do you have a show when you probably have technology that can fix or solve anything? And so I was I wasn't sure how they were going to make a show out of it or drama, and they ended up doing that. They were still able to do that because even with all this technology and everything else, sure, it could be at this point magic to us, but that doesn't mean that there isn't conflict or battles or story or anything like that.
Season 3 could have been like exploring a brave new world. It's an alien atmosphere, like everything is new to them. But within the episode, it just could have been like a 100-year jump for all that matters. Nothing was different.
Right. Well, and that's why I think that we're going to get that in season 4, honestly. And the reason I think that is because besides Saru being on PTO and how awkward it's going to be when he's done, and who's going to be the captain of Discovery now because Burnham's a captain, and it's not like Saru was demoted. Is he going to be the captain, or are they going to put him on a different ship? I don't know. But I think that we're open now to be able to do the things that you're talking about, and that's because we've tied up all of these things that have been threads that have been going on for the first 3 seasons. And when you talk about a story arc or a serialized arc, if you really think about it, the first 3 seasons was one big arc. And starting with season 4, who's to say that we're not going to have a whole new arc that goes from season 4 to season 5 or whatever it may be. And the thing that we have to do, and this was difficult for me at first, is that we have to change how we look at Star Trek now and how we think about it. It's a different landscape. TV is different now. Binging is a thing. Shorter seasons with more production value. And I just feel that if we keep ourselves thinking about Star Trek shows in the 90s, then yeah, we're not going to really be able to adjust to the new stuff. But we have to adjust and grow because it's just different. Like right now, I could not imagine trying to keep up with a 26 episode season of Star Trek these days. It'd just be. I don't think the attention span is there.
Don't compare it to Star Trek. Compare it to even The Mandalorian. Take another issue from this season. The yoke of powerful organizations controlling smaller planets. That was there with that farm episode with Book, if you remember. How did they solve it? They had the power of friendship. They hugged together. I don't remember. Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
While on The Mandalorian, a simple season. You can say, have you seen The Mandalorian?
Yes, I've seen it. Mm-hmm.
A very simple story arc, a very, very simple one. Even with people joked with side quest, and even there,
he did every side quest possible just to get this child from point A to point B.
Exactly, and even there, you could see how major powers trample over the locals in such a powerful way, and there was no easy way out. Again, a story that was there and it wasted potential. Imagine if the Emerald Chain would have landed on Earth instead of the Vulcans, back on First Contact. That could have been a crazy story. Like, every angle you would take would be better than what we got now.
Right. Yeah, I get it, and I get your comparison to The Mandalorian.
8 episodes, 20 minutes each.
What's that?
8 episodes, 20 minutes each, and it was deeper.
Right. Well, that's because just the scope was different. The scope of The Mandalorian was very different from Discovery because, like I said, it was essentially I've got this child. People are after him. I need to get him to his own people, but to do that, I have to do all these side quests to get there. It wasn't as complex as we have to solve a mystery of all dilithium inactive warp cores going inert and all these other grand things. And so that's why we got that from The Mandalorian. It was not a huge epic arc that needed to be accomplished.
Wait. You just mentioned something, and then this is what I really want to hit it. What I really want to hit on is the payoff for the plot line and the payoff for the burn. Personally, to me, the payoff was just absolutely lackluster. And I mean, lackluster is a very kind word for that. I mean, it was really kind of a very I don't know how to pronounce it. Deus ex machina. Just
Yeah,
kind
Deus
of,
Ex Machina.
it's just like you have a child. You have a child whose cells were somehow mutated by a planet to resonate with the subspace of dilithium, and then he got angry, and then all the dilithium everywhere in the galaxy started, went inert and blew up an active warp core. And it was related to trauma, right? He was traumatized at his mother dying, and so he went completely berserk, and that caused the most devastating effect in the history of the galaxy. Like that payoff. We first of all, I didn't even like the fact that we were searching for the burn. It should have been like a side note saying the past is the past. Let's try to rebuild what we got. And if we find out what it is, great. Okay, here's the reason. The payoff was Vulcan or Nivar thought they caused the burn, but it was actually in some kind of nebula, and we used the Vulcan data to show that it was not Vulcan, and yet it was some nebula somewhere else in the galaxy. And then we get to the explanation that it was Su'Kal, and Su'Kal's DNA caused some sort of resonance frequency with subspace, which, again, whatever science you took, fine, like leave it alone. My problem is it was such on a grandiose scale. Like the amount of destruction is very, very reminiscent of all the J.J. Abrams verse stuff, and it reminds me why those movies fizzled out, because everything was so huge. Everything was exploding supernovas and gigantic black holes and red matter, and you had these giant swarms coming out of nowhere that could engulf a planet. You had this monolithic kind of destruction and power that not even the aliens in the original series had. It's like you look at Apollo and the Metrons and the rock monster that brought back Colonel Green and Abraham Lincoln and and even Q at some point. I'm like, these people don't even have this kind of power, and all of a sudden, this one child was able to do something that the Borg, the Dominion, the Romulans, and the Klingons all tried to do to the Federation and failed miserably. And all you had to do was like the power of sadness of one child.
And he did it on accident.
Right. And you're like, Jesus Christ, man. Like this is like a typical TNG episode where you had Charlie X, or you had that one alien that created the hollow environment for Commander Riker. Like that could have been like a one-shot episode. Like, we found the cause of the burn. Here's what happened. It was an accident. Let's try and rebuild the civilization now. Like, that payoff to me was just so.
Because they stretched it out so long.
What?
Because they stretched it out for so many episodes. They were compiling the data for like 7 episodes. God damn it! Like, get on with it. And then it's just this. You expected some great evil, some new alien race, some kind of conspiracy. Nope.
So let me ask you guys this, because once this season ended, this kind of hit me, and it just got by me. But when we got to Unification 3, that that trifecta of people made it sound like the SB-19 data was something that they held precious. It was dangerous info, or it was like it had big political ramifications. It was look at everything that Michael had to go through. Look at the whole point of that episode to get that data, and then the data ended up being nothing more than Okay, so what was it? Like, what was it? I don't. They made this big deal about it, but then I forgot about it.
A lot of things.
What was so? So what ended up being so important about that they had to have a tribunal for her to get it? Do you guys remember?
Yes, it was. They wanted to measure the distances from the explosion because there was a microsecond of difference between the explosions.
Well, I know that. It's just the actual SB19 data. They acted like it was something that it wasn't. The point of the data wasn't that there were these microseconds. First, they made it sound like the data pointed to Navarre being the cause, but they said, well, no, it really wasn't. But the data, they made it sound like the data pointed to that it was either an attack or it was caused by Earth, and they tried to cover it up or something. They made it sound like really dangerous and nefarious to get this info, but then suddenly it wasn't that big of a deal. It's like, oh, this is just coordinates of research that says it might have come from this nebula. It went from a big deal to why was it a big deal?
The whole point of it was the thought process was, or at least what I ascertained it to be, was Navarre had this SB19, which, by the way, came out of the blue, the subspace network, where the Federation pressured Navarre to use it, and that caused the burn, and it was the Federation's fault, and it had this underlying kind of political ramification that the head of this so-called peace-loving organization forced a member to use technology that they think wasn't ready, and then that technology caused devastation. That was at least what I understood it to be. And then you look at the data, and you're right, you look at the data, and it's like, okay, yeah, cool.
Okay. Well, so in regards to the this big cataclysm, this big disaster and unimaginable destruction being watered down to a kid that had a tantrum. So this was something that we discussed on our most recent live stream for Beyond Trek podcast, and I will say that I really don't know what I expected the cause of the burn to be. I'm not sure what I wanted, but it just seems like, and the way they explained how it happened, perfectly logical. It's like, okay, I like that explanation. However, why did you even go there? Why make it that this was caused by this kid? I appreciate the explanation. It makes sense. But it's like you're explaining something that you were adequately explaining something you didn't have to do. Why did this whole thing get distilled into what it was?
Did they even explain why everyone heard that music?
Yes. It was not music as much as it was a distress signal, but the way that it was getting distorted and remodulated or whatever by the nebula, they were actually able to find out that it was that distress signal by the ship that was in the nebula.
Yeah. You're right. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah. No, it's another one of those things that, like the SB19 data, it seemed really important at one point, and then suddenly you realize that they just kind of ended that, and you don't remember why it was such a big deal.
It seems like everything was all over the place. Like everything. Like you know what's cool? Like they were sitting in the writing room. It's like, you know what's cool? Let's do this. And everyone's like, yeah, that's gonna be cool. And that's more or less how they wrote this season.
Right. Yeah. I don't disagree with you there. It did kind of felt that way.
So wait, Techman promised me a debate with someone who liked this season.
You what now?
You promised me a debate with someone who liked this season.
Oh, I like it. I liked it. I didn't say I didn't like it. It's just even though I like it, when you make an argument in regards to a certain point, something like that, if I believe that you're right, that's a good point, a good way of looking at it, that I'm not going to bash it. And I think that's what I like about doing a reaction or progression review or something like that, is you can have a person on one side that likes it, a person on the other side that hates it, but you can still respect each other's opinions and and where they get it. That's just my opinion.
Agreed. Perfectly agreed.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I lean a little closer to liking it, and I think that's because I like seeing new Star Trek content. I know that there are some warts and things like that, and some rough spots, but for me, I've been a fan of Star Trek since I was 5 years old, with the Wrath of Khan, and I just like seeing it. I'm that much a fan that I like seeing it. And yes, there might be some episodes or some series where it's like, yeah, okay, that could have been better, but I am not ever going to not watch Star Trek. That's just me. Even if there was a shitty season of something, I'm still gonna come back.
I want to agree. I really, really do. But sometimes some things feel so. There's suspension of disbelief and there's suspension of disbelief. And when things are so illogical and seem to be nonsensical throughout an entire season, and this time even an entire series, I really, really want to agree with you, but I just can't.
I get it. It's not like they're making it easy to really enjoy it. I totally get that. That there are seasons or there are series where you really don't have to put a whole lot of effort into liking it. And I'll take us back to The Mandalorian. You don't have to expend any effort to like it. In fact, you would have to expend a lot of effort not to like it. Whereas with Star Trek, with Picard and with Discovery, I can certainly see the opinions and some of the comments by fans that Star Trek Picard and Star Trek Discovery, I will say that they don't make it plainly easy to like it. They can make it difficult for you to like it sometimes. I get that just by
I think part of the problem is, and I've said this before, it's some of these shows, and by some of these shows I mean Picard and Discovery, is that you have to divorce yourself from the previous incarnations of Trek and watch them as is. And I think if you're watching it as is, like if you're a 19, 18-year-old kid watching Star Trek for the first time and you watch Discovery, first of all, I'd say that the political consumption of a younger individual, a late teens, early 20s, really fits with the demographics of who Discovery seems to be targeting. And if you watch it for the first time, it's got really cool special effects, and it's got your 13-second attention span, and it's got all these gizmos and stuff, and it's got all this sleek sets and whatnot. And I think you'd enjoy it more. Problem is, that's great, but you can't ignore the 800 or so episodes of previous Trek incarnations that went into making the show. And I think that's where it rubs people in a way that, it just there is a delicate balance to be had, but it seems like something is not connecting with the old Trek audience to say, cool, I like this new Trek. Boom, here we go.
Well, it's because I think that they won't go through that divorce. They might go through the separation, but they won't take that step to actually file for divorce on that. And I think that's part of the problem, is you're not willing to fully let go or to try to let go to to all that past Trek and all that canon and everything else. So I think if you don't allow yourself to take it how it is and not be spending your time looking for canon violations or plot incongruities, you may find it that you enjoy a little more. And I get it. There are things that have happened in these series. It's, well, wait a minute, that doesn't fit, or that's not, whatever. But it's just I don't watch it to try to find mistakes.
Right.
And I think that is a distinction that's not being made.
Right. Sometimes I can't turn my brain off because I look at these things and I'm like, oh my God. Anyways, I want to get to the clickbaity part of this section and talk about whether Star Trek Discovery is actually canceled. Now, why would I say such a thing when a CBS statement said season 4 is in production? Number one, I look at the season finale, and there were a lot of things that were tied up in the season finale that previous season finales in Discovery haven't been tied up before. For example, you look at the season 1 finale, and you have the Enterprise showing up and go, nose to nose with Discovery. Okay, you obviously can't leave that on you can't leave the show on that note.
Right.
And season two, you had Control is dead, and now they're going off into the future to never before seen Trek lands. And while that can be taken as a season finale, it's like, okay, well, hey, you're going into a new frontier. Why did you make a show that was just in the old frontier? Now you're not doing the new stuff. But then season 3 ends with Su'Kal and Saru are on whatever the Kelpian planet is.
Kaminar,
thank you.
Out of my mind. You had everybody else kind of tied up.
Osira had a very bad payoff. She just got shot in the head unceremoniously. Aurelio somehow wasn't beamed into space along with the other regulators, but he's seen the light, I guess, so he stays on. And everybody else, Dira, Stamets, Culver, Nielsen, Mystery Lady is now not in the same scene anymore. Owo Detmer, they're all kind of there, and she's in the captain's chair. And then it was very reminiscent of Star Trek 6, where it's like, pick a planet and just keep going until morning, where they're like, let's fly. And off goes the shot of Discovery, warping away, but they don't use warp, they use spore drive to go places. So, and then you have this quote with Gene Roddenberry, and you have the original series music playing instead of the Discovery music. Subsequent to that, Netflix internationally only signed an agreement with CBS, a 3-year deal. And so far, I haven't seen any kind of renewed deal with Netflix internationally for more seasons of Star Trek Discovery. And then usually we'd had some sort of image, some sort of info that leaks through during filming, during all these things about here's like the Klingon image was leaked, and something else leaked in season 2, the image of Spock and whatnot. And I haven't seen any of that. If you look at the Twitter sphere, yes, they announced November 12th that they're filming season 4 of Star Trek Discovery. However, since that time, there has been no update. Now, that could be due to COVID, that could be due to more restrictions, understandable. But it doesn't seem like there's any kind of update or anything with regards to season 4. And somebody somewhere down the line said, they're planning like season 4 and season 5 to be filmed kind of back to back,
but it doesn't look like any work was actually done on it. So that leads me to believe this could be a de facto,
series finale. And I want to get your thoughts on that. Setting aside the fact that there was an official announcement that there is a season 4.
Okay, if you don't mind, can I go first on that?
Absolutely.
So here's what I'll say to address your concern about season 3 tying up all the threads before it. And the thing that I will ask you is, why can't they tie up everything and not have another loose end going into season 4? Why couldn't we take these first 3 seasons as like kind of one big thread? What's to keep season 4 from starting completely fresh and introducing like the rebirth of the Federation and to move forward from there? So if you really think about it, if we do that, then technically that's not a thread that's tied up. That's something that is still going. So now we have to deal with the resupply and the reforming of the Federation if they go there. And there's all kinds of things that can be tied into that. So I don't see the season finale of season 3 being there might not be a season 4 because season 3 seemed to have ended everything. No, and honestly, in my opinion, I don't think it does. I think that next up is the rebirth of the Federation, in my opinion. In regards to why we had that production, the production's underway, but nothing else after that. Either they want to keep things secret, not build the anticipation, or there's nothing to talk about. In production doesn't necessarily mean that we're actively filming. It could mean that we started having meetings where we talk about storylines, or we started scouting locations that we might want to film at. So production beginning really could mean a few different things. But I think that we have a tendency to take under production as people are in uniform, they're on set, and scenes are being filmed. And because they might not be doing that, there's nothing to talk about.
Right. So the reason why I'm bringing all that up is it so far hasn't been the MO of Discovery to kind of wrap everything up that they've done. Now, that very well may be the case that it's an arc. Season 1 to 3 is like, say, the Burnham arc, right? And then the next arc will be the Federation arc or something. I don't know. However, on the first day of production, November 12th, I believe, 2020, there was a video posted by Saru shaving his head, getting ready to put on the makeup, the Saru makeup. So, and then there's a video by Sonequa Martin Green saying, we're all on set together, and we're, like, it's a one big happy family, and it's I miss these guys, and yada, 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 right? So that, the allusion to that, to me, is that they're filming, November 12th.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, right, without anything else, and I think I remember reading somewhere that they were going to do like Mandalorian style, where they're going to have like a giant green screen in the background, so they don't have to go filming outside.
Correct. Yeah, I heard that too.
Okay. Yeah. So again, has nothing else other than that has shown up through the interwebs, and so it's just really odd that you're 3 weeks or 3 months into production. You've got only like 5 months left before everything wraps up, because I think the official announcement is they're going to wrap everything up June 2021 and premiere sometime in 2022. And like nothing, we haven't heard anything, So that's why to me, it's really and then why else would you play the original series music at the end of season 3? Like, that doesn't make sense.
Keep emotional unearned materials. That's it. Nothing else. They just want to do everything emotional again. So I don't see how is that related.
For nostalgia?
They brought back the Enterprise. Basically, they shouldn't have. Just like
I think it would have been a crime not to have the Enterprise, especially if you knew beforehand that, well, this is the only chance we have to do it because we're going 950 years in the future. So if we're going to do the Enterprise, this is the time to do it. And I'm glad that they did that. It just, because we all knew it was there. We all knew that the Enterprise was out there. Pike was
I'm just saying that it's nostalgia. That's it. Nothing else. That's the reason that the Spider-Man movies play the 60s Spider-Man theme. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then to address the thing that the tech man was saying about lack of updates, so I'll just make this argument for them. Are they obligated to have all these updates and everything else?
Agreed.
No. I'm not saying officially there's any update. I'm just saying nobody's obligated to make any kind of official update.
But I'm saying is normally for seasons 1 and seasons 2,
by this time around, somebody leaked a photo somewhere, or somebody
said something in a blog somewhere and then it was reported.
You know what I mean? And I haven't seen any of that. I mean, out of anybody's camp.
Maybe there's less around to leak the pictures out because of COVID.
Well, and the other thing is that maybe they're not ready to start building up all the hype yet, because if what you say is right, that it's going to premiere sometime in 2022, that's still kind of a ways to go to be talking about something. So yeah, they might just
also. CBS made their new network based on Discovery, so I doubt they'll cancel it because of now after all this. What is
exactly
it called? Paramount Plus or whatever it's called? Something.
Yes, CBS All Access. Their anchor is Star Trek. They're not going to be quick to the trigger to cancel something.
Right, but they have so many shows now in production, like Strange New Worlds is in production, and Lower Decks is in production, and then the Nickelodeon show Prodigy is in production. Whereas, Star Trek, Discovery, and Picard, I don't know. To me, they kind of seem like they hang in the balance.
Well, but the thing is, it's CBS All Access, not Star Trek All Access. So they may be leading off with Star Trek while they build up some money, get some subscribers, and then kind of start going towards original content. It's just like Netflix. There was a point where you actually were able to get and watch normal things on Netflix, and then once they got everyone hooked, they started slowly putting in Netflix original movies, Netflix original shows, and now suddenly pretty much everything on Netflix is Netflix produced, and all these other properties, they've been taking them back. So they build up the goodwill by putting well-known or popular things on there. Then once they got you hooked, they start putting in some of this other stuff. They've got to get you on first. You've got to get the subscribers, get them hooked. Just think about it. So if Netflix started off that everything was a Netflix movie or a Netflix show or Netflix original or whatever, no-name actors and all that stuff, do you think that they would have gotten the kind of business that they did? Nope. Once they got it, then that's when they started showing. Now, I'm not saying that there's not some good Netflix movies or original series, but for me, it took me a while to actually decide to even sit and give something directly Netflix the time of day, because I thought, oh, this is crap. This is going to suck. Who's Netflix? They don't do movies or film a TV series or whatever. Well, but suddenly there was some good stuff. But that's because I was already hooked. They had already got me because they did have Star Trek on Netflix. I think they still do. They had that. They had these other shows I was familiar with, these movies that I already knew. So They got people rounded up before they decided to start going into their own territory. Whereas if CBS All Access led with original CBS content, stuff that no one ever heard of or whatever, I don't think they would have gotten the numbers they needed. So, of course, they're going to lean on a well-established franchise first. So that's why I think that even though you have all these different Star Trek series in production and in development, they're not in a position yet where they can decide, okay, we don't need Discovery anymore. They're just not there yet. And who knows when they will be. But I just know it's not yet.
I got nothing to it. Perfectly good.
All right. Well, that said, anybody got any final thoughts? Discovery Season 3, Season 4, and beyond?
I don't think I'll stay for Season 4. Maybe I'll change my mind.
Really?
I just don't think so.
You're not going to watch any Season 4?
Yeah. I'll say why. Because in the end, for me, Star Trek could be anything. It could be a Klingon opera. It could be a comedy. I don't care. The universe could expand to 1 billion different directions. There's nothing anymore that says this is Star Trek, this is not. For me, it's plot lines and threads that don't make any sense. You know the term Chekhov's gun, where they say,
yes.
Well, I don't need to explain it then. This has been Discovery and even Picard all along. They show something and it doesn't appear again. They do something and they don't explain it anymore. And that just destroys the show for me. People might think about it as nitpicking, but take even, for example, the first episode of Picard. I'm bringing this show up. When the Romulans try to kidnap Daj and put a paper bag over her head, they know she was an android. Why did they put the bag over her head?
Yeah, we know she's an android, so let's just put this potato sack over her head and we'll be good. Yeah, you're right. You're right. That was a very foolhardy idea.
But that was just one example out of a million that really ruins the show for me. I could go on forever. Why was there such a massive empty space in for the turbo lifts on the show? Like 80% of the ship is now empty space.
I hate that.
How did Aurelio live with Osira for 50 years and never noticed she was evil? Why does the phasers make some people fly and some people don't? It's nitpicking, but when you have like 1 billion of those every episode, it just destroys the show. It shows such low quality of writing that it just becomes unbearable. By the way, I made a long list. Like I have like 100 things if you want to read later. That it's just like from 80s catchphrases where she says, "Unlike you, I never quit." Remember that in the last episode? When did she see Osira quit?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Trusting Aurelio. He never did anything to warrant their trust. I could rant on forever, but I think we're out of time.
You know what I think about the relationship between Aurelio and Osira is? Remember how Stamets said that he has kids? Osira might be the mate. I'm just saying.
Oh, wow. That would be... Well, I don't know. That would be a little salacious because he met her when he was 10. So how old, at minimum, do you think she could have been to be running an organization like that?
Does it really matter? It's Discovery. Just go with it.
Well, you're right. The Phantom Menace had precedent that it's not creepy to be a 10-year-old kid creeping on a teenager and then eventually to marry someone that's fairly older than you are. So,
by the way, speaking of relations, did what's her name? Suddenly I forgot all the names.
Who are you thinking of?
Did Gray and Adira? Did Adira ever agree to be the child of Stamets? Did you ever say, "Yeah, I agree to be adopted," or did they just claim her? You're now our child. You have no choice.
They're gonna go to the adoption agency off camera. That'll be off screen.
But it seems like she never gave the consent.
I think that's more of a political statement as opposed to a in-universe statement.
Right.
But still, it just seems a bit unfair.
Actually, I was kind of waiting for Aurelio to correct Stamets, or at least it's just because Adira wants to be referred to as they them. And so I think the scene was, I also have a child, and they're in need. And I was waiting for Aurelio, like, but you said you had one child. What is this they them thing?
Yeah, I actually thought about
Right. Yeah. Well, but in the moment, there wasn't time to get into that. Even if it might have been a few seconds. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's just that would not have quite fit, and now you've got a possible issue with the fans being offended by that having been said like that.
But I want to go, if you may, to what was. I could nitpick, as I said, for days. I could have at least a PhD in nitpicking. But above all, and I think this is the biggest sin, it was just boring. You are in the year 3150, and it's boring. It's the most dull future I've ever seen. Even on Enterprise, and they had the budget of $7. They had a more exciting view of the future, with that ship that was bigger on the inside, if you remember that episode. And the future there was exciting. Suddenly, ships from out of nowhere came, and everyone was mysterious. That was an exciting future. You see those time-traveling ships coming on the other shows. That was exciting. And now that they arrived in the future, and they might as well have been 3 days after the second season. There was nothing of interest. No new aliens, no new organizations. The technology was just slightly upgraded teleporters, and the cells were separated. And that's it. Well, where did it all go? It was uncreative. It was just depressing to see.
Yeah, I can see where you'd say that. I do, and I respect that perspective. For me, like I said, I might be a unique case that I'm always going to be there to watch Star Trek, and in regards to the next season, I think that we're going to be saddled a little bit less from the prior seasons and where we have to go to wrap up a bunch of threads. So I'm hopeful for it. I think that we're going to get some more exploration and probably not so much of the, just fighting or special effects kind of stuff. So that's where my hope is for my closing thought.
Well, I'm going to watch season 4 if it's around, just because it says Star Trek.
I think it's my obligation to watch anything that
says Star Trek, because I'm such a huge Star Trek fan. But to Mordon's point, you're right. There hasn't been anything that was different. I mean, yeah, we did see some new aliens.
I don't consider the Kwai-Jun or whatever they're called as new aliens.
No. The in episode 2 where at the bar, those aliens were kind of new. Where Zarek, we saw some old aliens. I mean, we saw Morn. Like I said, Morn, a cameo as a stormtrooper.
Yeah, the species that Morn was a part of. Yeah.
We saw really matte skinned Orions, and somehow, I read a report that Simon Pegg for some reason hated Enterprise because of the theme song, so he never watched it. And it seems like the writing staff or the writing room of Star Trek Discovery seems to have completely ignored Enterprise altogether, because the in-canon violation with the Orions is just kind of insane to me. I just don't get it. Where are the Orion female pheromones? I mean, she should have had everybody
at her beck and call.
Wrapped around her finger.
And Admiral Vance should have been like, I'm going to sign the treaty right now because I'm so hard. I mean,
You're
like,
right.
And the Orion males, we saw one Orion male, actually two, or it might have been the same one in the first episode, and then in that episode where Ren was liberated, and then he got killed in an episode later. And
yeah, her nephew.
as far as I remember, like the Orion males were very big and brutish. Played by characters like Paul White, the Big Show from WWE. So I'm like, what happened there?
I think that's a case of they can be, just like there are certainly humans that are big and brutish, but we come in all shapes and sizes. I don't see being a big guy as like this is the definitive trait of an Orion male, and I think that we can kind of get ourselves into a little bit of a knot when we think of something like that, and then we keep forgetting that the humans come in all shapes and sizes. We can get in a tizzy about how the Klingons look, but then we forget that humans come in all different looks and shades and skin tones and everything else. But I don't want to get into the whole Klingon topic. But
I want to ask a question.
But go ahead.
What was Cyrus' plan?
You mean with the signing of the armistice?
Like
what was the plan?
She kidnapped Discovery. No one knows exactly how she found them, but she kidnapped them. She hijacked the ship, and then she jumped into the Federation HQ, and then she tried to negotiate a peace treaty. But what was the plan?
I'm going to say that I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that was her plan. That there was not a nefarious underlining plan.
So if you would just call from afar and say, okay, Federation, I'm tired of fighting, let's negotiate peace. You think they'd say, no, we don't like peace in the Federation?
Right. No, they're not going to do that, especially when they're on the short side of the stick in this conflict.
So
because
what's the point?
What's that?
What's the point then?
Well, okay, so you're right. You're right. The Emerald Chain really had a leg up on the Federation. They had more people, more ships, whatnot. Starfleet's kind of limping along. So you're saying, well, if I'm the superior force, why would I reach out to an inferior one? And to answer that. To answer that, I'm going to take you back to Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. The Klingons technically really did not have a reason to try to make peace with the Federation until they lost their primary dilithium mining source, which was their moon, Praxis. So the same thing with the Emerald Chain is that they're running low on dilithium. So instead of let's just keep fighting and bickering, it is we're low on dilithium like you are, and we need to just work together, pull our resources. Otherwise, we're all going to be up shit's creek.
The Klingons never wanted to hijack the Enterprise to negotiate that peace. They just said, okay, here's our representatives, let's discuss things.
Well, yeah, I get it. I get what you're saying, but
And if you wanted hostages, why didn't you just jump to our planet first, unload them, and then go to the Federation HQ?
Perhaps there was some political reason that she couldn't do it like that within the Emerald Chain. Perhaps you're right. I mean, it's sticky. I can't say that I can really explain the logic behind that method. It's it's one of those things where, and this gets back to that whole that whole issue with the pheromone things with the Orions and kind of ignoring what Enterprise did. There are times in Star Trek where one show decided to go a route with something whether it be a race or a species or whatever, and it would completely trample on what you're trying to do. Sometimes I believe sometimes they kind of think, all right, listen, so this writer back in 2005 decided to make this a trait of the Orions, but we can't do that for our show here that we're doing that we're filming in 2018 or 2019 or whatever, because it would just completely kill our entire plot line. Sometimes they just have to say, well, all right, we can't be beholden to something that happened in one episode of Enterprise written by this one dude. It's a shame. And I think they know that we're going to catch it. And we know they know that we're going to catch it. But what are you going to do? Who else would have been the antagonist for that if they wanted to at least make it a recognizable and known race? Are they going to go ahead and give us some more Orions, which we haven't seen a lot of, and someone that's recognizable? Or are they going to give us something else? And the reason being is that, well, we can't use the Orions because this one guy said the thing 15 years ago and ended up screwing us. They're not going to.
No, I think it would have been more of like an additive bonus that
Osira
has been able to amass this gigantic army for her own by utilizing the Orion, the native Orion physiology. And then using her pheromones to basically subdue Vance and get him to try and sign the armistice, and then that would make sense for Burnham to go completely AWOL, shoot her in the head. Like, that would have been completely.
Isn't it? It's not permanent though. The whole pheromone thing, like it wears off, and then you kind of like you realize you did it, almost like when you're a bit tipsy or drunk some night. The next morning you remembered you did stuff, but you know that at the time you weren't in control. It may have been a case like that with the Orion pheromones.
All right.
Would have more sense than what happened on the show.
Well, I mean, like you said, and I don't agree with you that you can certainly spend a good portion of time picking apart those things or the inconsistencies, but I think with so many hours of Star Trek, so much of it, et cetera, that and I might be too nice, but I kind of give them some rope and some leniency on the occasional.
Just want to correct you. It's not the inconsistencies with the other shows. It's the inconsistencies with themselves. It's the logic they picked up and then ruin themselves.
Yeah. Yep. All I can say there is I don't disagree with you. I don't have a solution, but I don't disagree with you.
All right, gentlemen, I want to thank you guys for coming and talking Trek with me.
Absolutely, it was fun.
For the past couple hours.
It was.
Let's do it again. We can do another Star Trek bit content with.
Just pick a random topic.
I'm sure there's enough to talk about with all the content
that Star Trek's offered us over the multiple decades that it's been on.
Big J, I want to thank you, Big J from Beyond Trek Productions. Check him out on YouTube and where podcasts are available everywhere. And then Mordon, feel free to chat with him on Discord. He's on the official Star Trek Discord, and he's always around.
Yeah, usually.
So I want to thank you guys both for being here. Usually, yes. Yeah, just be aware of the time differences between everybody.
Not everybody's in the same time zone.
And thank you again, guys, and I hope you had fun. And we'll see you guys next time for another episode of Trek Talk with Tech and Kirk. I'm TechMan16, and we'll see you guys next time.